My TV. Dropped a new vid, you know what I'm saying? I like his videos. You know what I'm saying? I ain't even watched it, but I'ma like it. That's how I know it's gonna be solid. Title of the video is How the CIA Uses Pigeons to Spy. This always been a myth. It always been a myth. But now we finna see how they really do it. And I like how he break his videos down. So I believe everything he's saying. Off top.
This pigeon is a CIA spy. It's wearing a tiny high-tech camera, and it's about to gather intelligence on Soviet nuclear submarines. This is a dolphin. Right now, it's being trained to carry bombs and attach them to enemy vessels, possibly miniature.
What? They're training dolphins to put bombs on stuff? So they making these animals wild pets and training them to Siri. I'm not talking bombs. To you.
This raven isn't just flying around. It's on a mission. Currently, it's heading towards the hotel room of a KGB agent to plant a bug there. And this cat has been sent to spy on a Chinese diplomat. It had a microphone surgically implanted in its ear, and there's an antenna in its tail. This all sounds like science fiction.
It does, but this shit sound crazy.
But animal spies are very real. Their stories have long been shrouded in secrecy, myths, and legends. But in 2019, the CIA released a large trove of previously classified documents. They give us a glimpse into how the CIA tries to weaponize animals. Today, we will look at the 4 most spectacular projects.
4 different ones.
They reveal a story of Cold War paranoia, unchecked hubris, absurd waste, spectacular failures, and wild ideas that were taken too far.
They got mosquitoes, bro.
Most of this video is based on declassified CIA documents. Of course, the CIA wants to present itself in a certain light, and it's careful about what it reveals. Some parts are heavily redacted, and sometimes other sources give conflicting information. We can only present what we know, and if we don't know something, we'll be transparent about it. As always, you can find our sources in the description. Humans weaponize animals to make use of special capabilities they themselves lack.
Yeah.
A dog's sense of smell is up to 10,000 times stronger than ours. It's perfect for sniffing out illegal drugs. To cross the Alps and invade Italy, the Carthaginian general Hannibal used war elephants. During World War II, the Polish army deployed a brown bear named Wojciech to the Italian front. In Iraq, the US military worked with dolphins, putting their unparalleled echolocation skills to use detecting underwater mines. And some work with animals is veiled in secrecy. By their nature, it's hard to tell exactly how far these programs have progressed. In 2019, a beluga...
That would be smart, though. They're using the animals in their natural places. Like, ain't like they taking them there and making them do something that they wasn't already doing. They wasn't all, like, they still swimming. Now they just got something on their nose, and they gonna give them a big-ass fish.
Whale was discovered in Norwegian waters wearing a camera harness. A tag identified it as belonging to St. Petersburg, Russia. It was quickly accused of being a spy.
Whale spy.
In 2007, Iran apprehended 14 squirrels near a nuclear enrichment plant.
Squirrels?
The animals were arrested as spies.
The animals were arrested as spies. How you gonna charge an animal? How are you going to charge the animal? If they caught and convicted, how you gonna charge the animal? Do the animals still live by our rules? For real.
In 2018, a senior military advisor
14 squirrels. They caught 14 squirrels and they handcuffed them.
Told journalists that Western nuclear spies have been using lizards to collect information about Iran's nuclear program. Animals have an inherent advantage that human spies lack. People simply don't notice them. Unlike human agents or advanced technology like drones, animals can typically pass undetected, even in secure areas. But there's a problem. Animals are not natural spies. They need training. During the Cold War, the CIA faced a mighty adversary, the Soviet Union. In trying to claim the upper hand, the agency explored all sorts of methods, some of them highly unorthodox. Psychedelic drugs, mind control, silent killer weapons, stealing Russian submarines, and, of course, animal agents.
Ravens.
In the mid-1960s, the CIA launched Project Axiolite. The goal was to provide reliable trained avian vehicles for emplacement, transport, and or recovery of reconnaissance surveillance sensors to meet operational requirements as defined by the sponsors. In other words, the CIA was training birds to transport things like recording devices. But with
Not only is that good in multiple ways, it's also good in another way that the animals, you won't think the animal acting crazy or acting weird. You won't think the animal acting like an animal. So you wouldn't think
birds were
2-3
spy
times
material.
about it.
there were several candidates, some stronger than others.
It's a parrot?
The cockatoo seemed to be a wild card. One memo states, "We are completely in the dark as to what the possibilities are in regard to this critter."
Because he might say something.
There were high hopes for the hawks. Brandy and GB are two of the program's hawks. They were especially reliable and determined. They could locate specific objects or features in strange territory. They could carry a 13-ounce package for more than a mile. They could even remove objects from a harness they themselves were wearing. But in general, they were not considered strong flyers. Horned owls respond to a high-frequency whistle and can be recalled by trainers, even in extreme low-light situations. But in daylight, their ability to discern objects is much worse than that of other birds.
Okay, understandable.
As time progresses, one unlikely candidate stands out. Doodah, a raven.
Doodah. That's a fire name.
We now know that ravens are extremely intelligent birds. They have excellent memories, can plan for the future, and are capable of using tools and solving puzzles. Researchers have found that 4-month-old ravens can perform certain cognitive tasks, as well as adult great apes. CIA documents usually stick to dry facts, but Doodah was Project Axiolite's superstar. In one memo, an agent dedicates a whole page to the saga of Doodah. Project Axiolite began at a Navy facility at San Clemente Island, off the coast of California. There, the CIA tested the strength of various birds. Their task, fly from the island to a boat and back.
Okay.
This might sound easy, but the distance was challenging, and the winds could be strong. Most birds could manage to fly between 50 yards and 1.5 miles. Doodah, meanwhile, flew 3.5 miles. A few months later, he was almost doubling that distance. He was also problem-solving. In every session, he would figure out exactly the right altitude he needed to fly for the
Doodah was a
unique wind
genius.
conditions. Aggressive native birds posed a major threat to the CIA trainees. Wild gulls and ravens soon figured out their training schedule. Once they knew when the CIA birds would show up, they would lie in wait and then attack. But Doodah solved this problem too. To avoid the gulls, he'd keep to a higher altitude and outfly them. The wild ravens were another matter. They would hide behind the bluffs, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Doodah's solution was to engage in brief dogfights with the ravens, while leading them further and further from shore. After about a mile, they would give up and turn back.
Because he had that dog in
Ravens'
him.
intelligence made them good at more than flying. According to Navy animal trainer Bob Bailey, they could be taught to recognize specific
And he said they were smarter than a adult ape. That's cold.
desks, open drawers, and carry heavy objects like
I
files.
seen Robert did something with I think they were ravens. Where they was like
The CIA started training ravens like Doodah extensively, and eventually used them in the field. According to the CIA documents, this is how they did it.
okay, how they do it?
A CIA agent wants to record a secret conversation between enemy agents. He knows where and when it's taking place, down to the building and the exact room. Now he needs to get a recording device close to the conversation as inconspicuously as possible. To do this, he goes to a nearby building with a view of the targeted location, no more than 300 feet away. With him, he
Okay.
has a trained raven. At the appropriate time, he aims a tiny flashing laser at the window ledge outside the room where the conversation is taking place. Then he releases the raven from its cage. The bird takes a disguised listening device in its beak and flies to the spot indicated by the laser to plant the equipment. The agent then turns on a special desk lamp to signal to the raven that it's time to return. Later on, the raven is sent to retrieve the recording device by the same method. At least, this is how it's described in the document, Operator's Manual, Avian Delivery System. In real life, things didn't go as smoothly. Training a wild animal to be a spy takes time. It takes planning. If the CIA is still
Oh,
training
shot that
animals
bird.
today, they're most likely using Odoo's all-in-one management software. Odoo
Pre-ad.
offers a powerful range of applications that help you manage your business. With Odoo's e-commerce app, it takes just a couple of minutes
I got you.
to create it. And if you e-commerce app, click Buy Training. One picks up so much device on the wrong windowsill, and when a device made it to the right windowsill, the microphone picks up so much ambient noise, the recording was useless.
Yeah.
The document suggests that this whole technique was only used a single time, and the attempt seems to have been unsuccessful. Unfortunately, Doodah's luck eventually ran out. One
got
day he was
jumped.
attacked by a pair of wild ravens he'd fought many times before. All 3 birds disappeared from sight, and Duda never returned. He was presumed killed in action. The saga
They were
of
jealous
Duda mourns his
birds.
loss.
They were jealous birds.
He was in a class by himself, writes his trainer. He had a very large bag of tricks and was loved by all. In view of these talents, I suppose I shouldn't have been too surprised when he so quickly became a star on this project.
Yeah, they were jealous.
In spite of our deep sense of loss, writes the anonymous agent, we do understand such tragedies are inevitable. Ravens aren't the only birds the CIA used as spies. In secret locations across the United States, Project Axiolite was also busy turning the humblest of birds into covert eyes
We've
in the
been
skies.
saying that for a long time. The pigeons, like down there in New York, like the birds, they don't move, they don't budge, cause we probably don't got to them birds before they was even mature enough to know. That's why they just stand there. They think y'all finna tell them to do
September
something.
1976. Aerial photographs show the Soviets building nuclear submarines in Leningrad. But the CIA needs more information. Spy planes fly tens of thousands of feet above their target, while satellites are restricted to space. From these distances, it's impossible to take detailed high-resolution photos. Enter pigeons. A pigeon could fly about 100 feet over a target any time, day or night, and regardless of the weather. Most importantly, no one would notice it, and they could clearly be trained. Pigeons are no strangers to war. During World War II, the British National Pigeon Service would drop cases of the birds over occupied Europe. People would send them back with information about daily life or even military details like troop movements. The key was their unique honing instinct. Anywhere you release a pigeon, it can find its way back home. Even today, this ability still isn't fully understood.
They know
To
their
exploit
address.
pigeons' natural talents for
They know
aerial
their
photography,
address. What you mean?
the CIA's Office of Research and Development created special 16mm cameras and harnesses for the birds to wear. The harnesses were made of leather and attached to the birds with adjustable Velcro tabs. They were designed to allow the birds full freedom of movement while holding the camera steady during flight. The cameras were lightweight and miniaturized. Each had a small battery-powered motor that advanced the film and cocked the shutter. Each camera had its own timer. When it went off, the camera would take pictures for just a few minutes, resulting in 150 to 220 photos. Together, the camera and harness weighed just 39.5 grams. To produce useful images, pigeons needed to fly directly over their target at exactly the right time, but this could be difficult to arrange. Once they were released, the pigeons would fly back home in a more or less direct line. If the target was located on that line, there was a fairly good chance the pigeons would fly over it. But in covert situations, it wasn't always possible to release pigeons in ideal locations.
Okay.
Some areas were restricted, others were too exposed.
What made
To
it?
get around this-
What made it too exposed?
Problem.
You can let it out through your window.
CIA handlers tried to teach the birds ABC flight. Point A is the point of release, point B is the target, and point C is the pigeon's home loft. To begin with, temporary targets a short distance away were established at point B. When they flew to these targets, the pigeons were rewarded. Over time, they were conditioned to expect this reward. Next, the reward at point B was eliminated, but to receive a reward at point C, they had to fly over point B first. And that's how they trained a pigeon to move from A to B to C.
So you really
Once the
training
birds
them.
were
How long-
conditioned, they moved on to
I want to see like video of this.
longer
I wonder
training
if,
flights.
if I can find some.
Inflatable white radums 20 feet in diameter were used as point B. The CIA trained and tested birds in lofts in Oregon, Virginia, Missouri, and Alaska. Alaska, it was noted, shared certain geographical features with areas of interest in the Soviet Union. The training yielded mixed results. Birds were often lost along the way. Some birds simply flew away. Some were killed by wild birds. On the longer training flights, many birds flew too low along freeways and were hit by cars. Birds sometimes disappeared while wearing the special equipment that had been developed for them. Losses were time-consuming and expensive. Each time a bird was lost, a new one had to be purchased and trained.
And trained again.
Some of the photos taken were very high quality. Some missed the target entirely. Even when the birds were fully trained, they could be relied on to complete their ABC mission only about 1 out of 4 times. A C flight still held potential, though. If the release point was chosen carefully, with the target area between it and the home loft, CIA analysts felt there was a high probability the birds would fly over the intended target and obtain the high-resolution photos required.
Okay, a little more better. A little better.
So the
I'm ready
CIA
to hear
knows
about
that the
these
Soviets
dolphins.
are building nuclear submarines, in the Admiralty and Sudomex shipyards in Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg, and it needs high-resolution photos. Time for the pigeons to shine. An agent will have to release the pigeons with the shipyards between himself and the pigeons' home loft. To do this without being detected will require clandestine release techniques. The documents mention 3 that are considered as options. One is releasing the birds from underneath a large overcoat.
Big coat
The
ass.
second option is briefcases and shopping bags with trick bottoms. The third option is this Volkswagen Beetle. A hole is cut in the floor. When the car is parked, pigeons are released through the hole. They waddle out from underneath the car and immediately take flight. The operation is to go ahead by August 1978.
I wonder if
But
they,
here the trail goes
ever
cold.
ran.
It's
if they
unclear
ran them over, and they were trying to let them out through the bottom of the car.
whether the operation actually ever happened. The documents don't say.
You think anybody is actually? I don't think anybody is actually watching to see if you letting the pigeons out. It's crazier stuff going on. Like I think I'd be more interested in looking at how a lady is taming them with bread, got 1 million birds sitting around her, than a nigga doing this. We just doing this one good time.
While the CIA's birds may have gathered invaluable aerial photo insights, other agents were being trained to sabotage enemy ships. This is James W.
Turn this
Fitzgerald.
fan off. It's getting cold. It's getting so cold.
He's an engineer and physicist. It's 1964, and Fitzgerald has been thinking about dolphins a lot.
Hey.
At a cocktail party,
Hope he
he
didn't
mentions
think
that he
about him
believes
that
the
way.
animals could be used in warfare. The person he's talking to happens to be an admiral in the U.S. Navy. He's intrigued enough to introduce Fitzgerald to someone from the CIA. Around the same time, the TV show Flipper debuts. It's about a crime-fighting dolphin in a marine reserve in the Florida Keys. Like most dolphins, Flipper is smart and friendly to humans, and he responds well to commands. We'll never know whether Fitzgerald and the CIA were inspired by Flipper, but it is plausible. According to the Washington Post, at this point, the CIA sends Fitzgerald to Florida, where he establishes a small laboratory. The same year, the CIA begins its dolphin program, Project Oxygas.
Oxygas. Project
The aim of Project
Oxygas.
Oxygas is to show that dolphins can be used in attacks against enemy ships.
They give them the.
To this end, harnesses and
mask.
nose cones are created to allow the dolphins to carry items. Someone in the CIA even produces this drawing. The dolphins are happily towing the explosive devices given to them by their handlers
Oh, I thought that's because
on
they
top
said they
of the
can
submarine.
breathe.
The program quickly passes its first test. It demonstrates that a dolphin can place a simulated explosive device against the propeller of a PT boat
Wait,
anchored in the
how do
open
they-
sea.
How do they get it up there? Now I got questions. How do they get them stuck up there without getting chopped up and everything with the propellers?
In November 1964, the Deputy Assistant Director of the Office of Research and Development writes that Project Oxygas has progressed more rapidly than we anticipated. It's unclear exactly what sort of simulated explosives these dolphins were carrying. The sentence that specifies this is partly redacted. The CIA probably planned on using conventional explosives, but if this was the case, why the need for secrecy? A 2021 article in Popular Mechanics suggests a haunting possibility. In 1965, miniaturized nuclear weapons might have seemed achievable in the near future. The magnitude of such an idea would certainly explain the need for continued secrecy. The program's first success
How did
unlocks
they
other
get them
goals.
stuck?
Trainers explore having dolphins place listening devices on enemy nuclear submarines. The hope is that directly attaching the devices will produce high-quality recordings that allow the CIA to better understand how the enemy's subs work. But wild animals are hard to train. One of the dolphins' strengths is how social they are. They're willing to work, especially as they bond with their trainers. But at some point, this becomes a liability. If the dolphins are performing tasks that please their trainers, then in the field, they'll need extra time to bond with agents before they can be considered reliable. There are also questions about whether dolphins can carry out operations over longer distances.
Like
At
what?
some point, the CIA seems to realize its limitations in understanding the dolphin's capabilities, and it contacts the Navy's Office of Naval Research to help. In 1967, the program's focus changed to intelligence gathering. The dolphins were to be trained to travel great distances, at least 12 miles. They would retrieve dead drops, items or information undercover agents had left behind in the water to be picked up. A memo from September 14th that year suggests that oxygas had become a joint program of the CIA and the Department of Defense. The CIA seemed unsure that Project Oxygas would produce actionable results, and the program seemed to be running out of steam. A make-or-break demonstration was scheduled for December. At that time, it would be decided whether Project Oxygas would continue. The demonstration seems to have been a failure. After that time, there are no further mentions of the program in the CIA documents. Surviving drawings and photographs gives us an idea of what Project Oxygas might have looked like. Glimpses of Project Quechol are far more rare. But between the redactions, a hazy picture emerges of likely the oddest creature the CIA ever created.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought to get no cat.
Is Acoustikitty.
Acoustikitty.
Acoustikitty is the legendary project of Project Quechol, the CIA's dog and cat program. Of all the CIA's animal projects, Acoustikitty might have been the most controversial, and the hardest to corroborate, depending on who you believe. The saga of Acoustikitty goes in fundamentally different directions. Here's the CIA story. In 1964, the agency wanted to be able to explore conversations held out in the open. Think two Soviet agents having a conversation in a public park. That required getting close and focusing in on the conversation without attracting attention.
Yeah.
The solution is cats, who can often prowl around without people ever noticing them.
I ain't gonna
lie. A microphone is surgically placed inside a cat's ear canal.
I do not notice cats unless I'm looking for them. Like, it don't been times I'm just walking. A cat been walking beside me since I left. And I look like, what this nigga following me? Ain't never seen that cat in my life.
Canal. A transmitter is placed underneath a bunch of loose skin, and an antenna is woven into its fur. The whole procedure is low risk, humane, and minimally invasive. But the cat is still a cat. It can be trained only so far. Eventually it will do what it wants. Acoustikitty was never deployed in the field, and the listening devices were carefully removed from its body. But Victor Marchetti, who was special assistant to the CIA's deputy director in the 1960s, tells a very different story. Here's his version. It's sometime in the 1960s. The CIA puts a Chinese diplomat in France under surveillance, but their bugs don't just pick up his conversations. They record all the noise in the room, including the squeaking of the couch. Individual voices are inaudible. This is characteristic of the microphones of the day, which tend to record everything around them indiscriminately. The anatomy of ears, on the other hand, allows us to focus on certain sounds and exclude others. This and your brain's auditory processing abilities are why you can have a conversation at a noisy party without being overwhelmed by every sound. When Acoustikitty turned its head, it would direct the microphone inside its ear. According to Marchetti, to implant the equipment, they slit the cat open, put batteries in him, wired him up, including putting a power pack in his abdomen. The tail was used as an antenna. They made a monstrosity. To focus on a single conversation, Acoustikitty would need to be trained. His handlers found that hunger or sexual arousal would cause him to simply lose interest and wander off, so they attached wires to his brain to monitor and neutralize those impulses. Marchetti
made a robot cat. So if he felt the need to go get him some meow, or if my nigga needed a little catnip, they got some wires in their head. Nope. You not hungry no more. You don't want that. You don't want that.
The CIA did attempt to use Acoustikitty in the field. The cat was then put on a test, sent across the street to eavesdrop on a conversation, being monitored by a van loaded with equipment. And as this poor little monstrosity waddled across the street, a taxicab came down and ran over it. So it was $25 million down the drain. $25 million was a lot of money then.
Dollars is a lot of money now. What? It's 25 million we talking.
The CIA disputes all this. On its website, it claims that Marchetti's comments were meant to be a joke, and the unclassified documents are no help. The single document about Acoustikitty is heavily redacted. The CIA didn't just train and transform animals, it also recreated them. This looks like a dragonfly, but look closer, it's a machine, the Insectothopter. The CIA created this tiny gas-powered listening device back in the 70s. It contains a microphone, and it can flap its wings rapidly and fly just over 600 feet in a minute, guided by a laser beam. A remarkable technical achievement. with some serious limitations. Even a light breeze can throw it off course immediately. It was never used operationally.
Bro, they just wasted money. It seemed like everything they did, they barely used it or didn't use it. They're wasting money.
In a memo, the CIA's Deputy Director of Research and Development wrote that unfocused experimentation in the animal programs represented the worst kind of waste in terms of manpower and money. The unclassified documents often suggest that the CIA was simply exploring what animals could do without having any real objective in mind. And the results are somewhat disappointing. Ravens were trained for years just to be killed by wild birds. Pigeons randomly disappeared with gear worth thousands of dollars.
Oh, you trained them ravens all this time. You ain't teach them how to fight.
And depending on who you believe, an expensive cyborg cat was at best useless in the field, and at worst immediately hit by a car. The declassified documents suggest that by the mid-1970s, the animal projects had fizzled out. Despite this disappointment, the quest to weaponize animals continues. The United States Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, known as DARPA, has been running programs aimed at controlling insects for espionage.
Insects?
In 2012, a team at MIT announced that it had developed a neural probe that plugged into moths' nervous systems, allowing for their flight to be controlled. Engineers at the University of Washington have implanted moths' antennae into the Smellithopter, a drone that can actually pick up smells. And in 2018, DARPA announced
a drone that can pick up smells? Where's the smells coming from? Bro, that don't even make sense. A drone that can pick up smell.
the Persistent Aquatic Living Sensors program. The program explored the possibility of using aquatic creatures as living alarm systems. That includes bioluminescent bacteria, which light up when disturbed by aquatic intruders. Another option was to study the sounds produced by snapping shrimp and Goliath grouper. In the case of the shrimp, disturbances in the audio could even indicate the size and shape of an intruder. It remains to be seen whether DARPA or the CIA can harness the natural world for intelligence purposes, or whether wilderness will remain just that. Maybe someday we'll discover whether any real success stories lie within all those redactions.
That was a W. Bruh be breaking it down. It just gave me more and more questions to ask.
$1 million. And at the
It just gave me more and more questions.